Okay, I think that we can start. So officially, good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar that Nanolock and Excem are organizing. We're going to discuss how to tackle cybersecurity in industrial IoT. For this, we have one of our great collaborators in this area, which is Nanolock, a great company that my colleague Yanir will explain in a few minutes. So the objective with this webinar is to discuss initially the vulnerabilities and attacks that industrial IoT systems may receive, and the way that they get it as a matter of introduction, just to set up a basic line. And then the industry expert, Yanir Laubshtein, VP Cyber Solutions of Nanolock, will go in deep through this topic. So what is Excem? Just to give a brief introduction about us, we are a company with more than 30 years of experience in working with security, defense, and cyber security, as well as business intelligence advanced solutions. We have, I don't know if to call it the luck, because it's not luck to confront and to be part of the digital transformation of the bad ones, the hackers, the terrorists, whatever, but we've been part of the fight against this kind of people in all the electronic and digital kind of war. So we acquired an incredible level of technological capabilities, not only for understanding and counteracting this attack, but also to integrate the solutions to develop specific developments for our customers. And also this allows us to get a fantastic access to innovation and disruptions ecosystems. Mainly one of the most advanced ones, which is the Israeli one, very experts in defense and cybersecurity. So we have several partners in that, and of course, Nanolock is one of them. So this is our value as well to this chain. So in regards of matter of introduction, what is Industry 4.0, which is about automation and robotics. It may comes together, robotic may come a bit of the mechanics of this, but brings all the digital transformation that the industry is coming over in all its aspects. And this digital transformation also, it opens a door for different kind of accesses, not only of course, for control and for getting information on measurements and etc., but also for the connectivity. This is why we can see here a smart meter, because it's part of this process of transformation that all the industry is taking. So the point here is that as we have several systems that are integrated, at the end of the day, there is no way to have one unique protection wall. At the end of the day, we cannot protect with one system or one kind of protection all these kind of systems. So each system has its own security and its own way of security interfaces and accesses, etc. And at the end of the day, the protection of this system will be as strong as the weakest link in this protection chain. And this is what we have to take care of. This is why Industry 4.0 is so complex to secure and to cyber secure. So when we are talking about industrial robotic requirements, we have three main issues here to take into consideration. Okay, one of them is the precision. We have to make sure that all the time the movements and sensors are getting the same information and the same kind of movements, the same steps that the engines are or the rotors are putting in place. It's very important as well, the physical safety that at the end of the day will put in danger the workers, and of course the instruments and the things that we are manufacturing, are controlling and making with these robots, and also the integrity, which is we have to minimize the possibility that the control software is protected in a way that we cannot cause any physical damage to the robot in one hand, but also to the environment of the system. And this is the point, and this is why it's important to secure this environment so roughly. So which kind, in regards of attack types, at the end of the day, what the bad guys do is to exploit the vulnerabilities that those systems may have. And at the end of the day, as I said before, as we are opening different kind of doors for controlling, accessing, updating, etc., we have to take care about them. So one of them is the unauthorized remote access, to make sure that we are covering and securing the way that people are accessing to the system with the correct keywords and passwords, etc. To make sure at the end of the day that the files and library are encrypted, because if they are opening and if somebody can access to them, they can read and access to them, and it's also, of course, problematic, as you know. Also, it's very important to maintain updated the control software. It may have some backdoors that we are not aware of, so this is very important to make sure that we have the last updates for that, and this is also an important role of Nanolock at the end of the day, and Yanir will explain that. And also everything in regards of the vulnerability of the control networks, in regards of credentials, the firewalls, everything to be updated and make sure using different kind of systems to assess the vulnerability that are covered. So which can be the possible attacks that these systems can get? Control parameters. They can modify the calibration parameters as well, which are different control and calibration, as you know, to change the logic of the production, and also to alter the final product and processes that these systems may run. It can be a method, it can be a robot, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there is a logic, and this logic has to be conserved. And for instance, if I take a meter measurement, at the end of the day, the process have to make sure that, first of all, I take the measure, and secondly, I send it. So if I alter this logic, at the end of the day, the information that I'm sending is not the correct one. So just to give an example of how this works. Of course, to disrupt the robot or the machine signals that we are sending to them in some way, okay? And very, very important also is that they can modify the system firmware, which is also, they can just ransom the system, they can just alter the way that they're measuring, they can do several things altering these kind of things. And this is a fantastic opportunity to introduce Yanir. Yanir is VP Cybersecurity Solutions in Nanolock Security. He has more of 20 years of experience working in the cybersecurity industry in various roles for government and the private sector, including his latest roles in PwC Cybersecurity and Privacy Impact Center. So he served in several places, and he led two strategic government projects in Israel, managing cybersecurity operations of the heart of Ministry of Energy and the Water Sewerage Authority, and subsequently designing and managing the development of Israel National SOC for critical infrastructure. So best and top of security we have here with us, and we are very proud and thankful for that. And early on his career, Yanir worked more than 10 years in various positions related to Israel government security, defensively, and other kind of roles as well. So it's an honor to introduce Yanir to us. So I will make him host right now. So Yanir, the stage is yours. You can unmute yourself. Just let me know when to pass to the next slide. I will do it for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the introduction, Gaby. And thank you all for joining us in our webinar. Yes, I was born and raised in the governmental area of cybersecurity, both for the defensive and offensive side. You can say playing cyber war games in our tough and rough neighborhood. But most of the background that related to IoT, cybersecurity, and critical infrastructure, I gained from managing and leading the cyber operation for the Ministry of Energy in Israel. So most of the things that I will discuss today coming from boots on ground experience, working with vendors, with cybersecurity companies, and knowing and understanding their challenges and the obstacles and constraints that the environment is working in. This is the agenda of our meeting. I will leave 15 minutes at the end of the session in order to provide you with the ability and to ask questions and to make it, as Gaby mentioned, more interactive. Okay, let's start, Gaby. So what are the challenges of the industrial IoT? I will refer to ICS, Industrial Control System, SCADA security, and IoT devices in one as one. So if I'm from time to time referring to ICS, OT, IIoT, and so on, I'm referring to the same thing. So what are the challenges, Gaby? Next slide. Few basic assumptions. There will always be vulnerabilities. No matter how hard and how strong you think your environment is, how isolated it will be, or you think it will be, always someone somehow will be able to penetrate and to do something, not necessarily to attack you. It can be a cyber event, not necessarily a cyber attack, but someone somehow will always be able to penetrate it. And I will give a small example. Let's say that you are isolated air gap, a nuclear facility somewhere in the desert. From time to time, you will need to conduct maintenance. Your server room is located and need to have different environment conditions, air conditioning, different level of energy, and so on and so forth. You can manage or you can harm the process by attacking the supportive systems. This is one example why something can always happen to your system. So this is one assumption that, as I mentioned earlier, environments are vulnerable and something can go wrong and will go wrong. What are the challenging and constraints that the IoT environment are facing? Regulation and standards. Every second Monday, you will find a new standard coming from new authority or new entity demanding and requiring you to deploy new measures to mitigate new risk based on new understanding, based on new attacks. And it is something that is very dynamic. And you should adapt and fit yourself to those requirements on a regular basis. Now, most of those organizations are familiar with the difficulty to adapt yourself to new requirements, but at the end of the day, they are all creating a basic and an Olympic base. Means that certain and basic requirements that are out there and you need and should comply in order to create a cyber hygiene in your environment. So first challenge and first constraint are regulation and standard. And I'm sure you're familiar with the national one and the local one, such as the NIST standards, the IEC standard, the ISO standard. All of them are good, all of them are relevant. The level of the technical level of each and every one of them is different, but they are all coming from the perspective that you should create and should approach and mitigate the cyber risk. Now, knowing the risk, understanding it, and managing it is the first thing that anyone should do. And this is the basic approach that all of those standards and regulations are taking. No, Gaby, we are still in the, we have multi-challenges and constraints. And these are the one that I picked off my head. Cost. Most of the devices that you will run during your process, your life cycle, are very sensitive to cost. Adding to that cybersecurity layer will immediately increase the cost of the process, and in some cases may jeopardize the efficiency, not the efficiency, may influence how your process is profitable. So we are very cost sensitive when it comes to cybersecurity solution in the IoT environment. And this is a major challenge. And when you need to convince your CEO, your CISO, your engineering department that you need to add another layer of cybersecurity, you need to convince them from the profit aspect of things. They need to see how and why they should add another cost to their daily, accountable or account when they are calculating the profit. So cost is a major challenge, and you should use the right word when coming to adding that to the IoT system or environment. Another major challenge is the multiple platform. And let's take a power plant. You will find over there at least 5 different vendors operates in the same environment. Each and every one of them owning a different system that in general help operate the process or the power plant in our case. So you need to operate in multi-platform environment. This is and you need to create the connections between each and every environment. That opens you to new vulnerability, new attack vectors, and you should consider that. You should map those connections, those interfaces, and understand what are the risks that each and every environment brings to your system. Not even more than that, each and every vendor brings his own culture, his own requirements, his own needs. Some of them will ask you to open VPN connections in order to monitor the telemetric coming from the process, in order to provide you with a warranty, in order to provide you with maintenance capability. You should map and understand those risks because they are highly, highly important. Now, when it comes to vendors, although I mentioned them in my last bullet, they are also very conservative. Means when you are trying to adopt or to deploy cybersecurity solutions in your IoT environment, since you understand the risk and you want to mitigate the risk, either it's coming from regulation, either it's coming from your organization maturity, vendors, they are more like a challenge than a constraint. Most of the vendors are very conservative. And this is, having said that, from the other end, they would like you to purchase and to deploy their own security solutions in their systems. So you should approach vendor in a very sensitive manner and explain them and make them you need to introduce them with your challenges and constraints. Either they are coming from your own understanding and awareness, either they are coming from the regulation or standard that you want to deploy in your system. So vendors are a huge challenge, but using the right words and right attitude, they will know and appreciate the fact that you are introducing them with new technology and helping them create a process or system more secure and more resilient to cybersecurity. In that specific point, I would like to share with you an example that I had in Israel when guiding a new power plant that were built by a famous and large European conglomerate, engineering conglomerate. The beginning, they were very intimidated by the fact that, the regulator in Israel asking so many requirements to deploy in the power plant, and how can we manage and make sure that the process will keep running without any latency? How can we make sure that there will be operational continuity? And layer by layer, we help them realize that adding cybersecurity, it's not necessarily jeopardizing the system or the process. On the contrary, it will help them make and demonstrate that their system is more secure and more resilient to cybersecurity threats, and not necessarily to cybersecurity attack, as I mentioned earlier, also to cybersecurity events. And in some cases, we were able to demonstrate that we are able to provide them with operational predictive maintenance issues. For example, if we are monitoring the SCADA layer or the operation technology layer, the OT layer, and if we notice an anomaly, we can ask, hey, guys, what is that? Is it a cyber attack or something wrong with your system? So in some cases, we were able to demonstrate them that by adding cybersecurity controls to the system, we are able to provide them with operational insight. And that's definitely a value that they were not expected. Later on, we noticed that the same large, famous European vendor is selling or introducing cybersecurity solution as part of his new approach to new clients. Now, we notice that now when he's selling a new system, he's selling it with a security layer that he learned from us in Israel, and adding that as a new feature in the new domain or new era of cybersecurity. So vendors, when you know how to approach them and how to speak their dialect, you can gain and fulfill both interests, your interest of cybersecurity and their interest of business continuity. Now, the last bullet that I wanted to, and this is a major one, and I, in a way, already covered it, operational continuity. When it comes to ICS, OT, or IIOT, the main goal is to preserve operational continuity. Cybersecurity is nice, money is nice, but maintaining the process, maintaining the operational continuity is, I think, the most thing that they look for. I mean, they're keen to maintain the process operating. And you need to help them understand that by deploying cybersecurity solution, you are not jeopardizing the process itself. You're only providing layers of defense in order to allow the operational continuity. Next slide, Gaby. What are the risks when it comes to cybersecurity? I think we already covered some of them, but let's deep dive a bit more. Gaby, next slide. This is a slide demonstrating the increase both in sophistication and volume of IoT attacks over the years. Some will say that all began with the famous Stuxnet back then in 2009, but some others will say that the first OT or ICS attack already began in 1982 with the Siberian pipeline. Although it was a mixture of human and cyber, some people tend to mention that as the first one. But what I wanted to demonstrate in this slide is that in the last year, both the sophistication and the volume of the cyber attack has increased dramatically. And you cannot ignore the cyber threat to your operation environment anymore. You should accept the risk and manage it. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all a matter of managing the risk. So if you know, and if you are aware of the risk, you are able to understand what are the potential damage that the risk is bringing to your environment, then it's more easy to you to mitigate it and to manage it. But the basic thing is to understand, okay, we have risk, it's coming from the IT network, either it's coming from the IT network, either it's coming from our internal employees, either it's coming from our third parties, contractors. You should map the risk and you should mitigate them. So this is the basic, this is the concept of this specific slide. Next one, please, Gaby. What are the possible attack scenarios and their outcomes? The most common one, and this is the one that we almost on daily basis are introducing by media and so on, are the outsider. Either it's a nation state capabilities or criminal organization, and even two script kiddies sitting in the garage and just, you know, screening the entire network of the global web and looking for exploit. The outsider are always there, and they always try to find, they need to find just one opportunity in order to penetrate the network. And you can build the defense as higher, the walls as higher as you want. At the end of the day, they need just one good luck in order to penetrate your network. But you should adopt and use, as I mentioned earlier, a minimal and basic line of defense in order to try to shift them to your neighbor. We say we have a say in my previous roles that if you put if you turn on the light in your house, the thief will go to your neighbor. So you should deploy and implement the basic things in order to make them understand that you are aware of cybersecurity, and let's hope that they will move to your neighbor and they will not try to attack you. Other attack scenario coming from the supply chain, and unfortunately, recently we see and notice that this is a very acceptable attack vector. Either it's by manipulating the supply chain to do harm, or by understanding that supply chain are creating a huge vulnerability to your system. We noticed that with the SolarWind attack, and I will not be surprised that the latest attack on the oil pipe in the US from the last week are also related to supply chain. Attackers will screen and map your organization better than you. Either it's by reading the open media and looking for publications that either you or your subcontractors published, but they will map. If they put you as a target, they will do the best that they can in order to find this single opportunity that I mentioned earlier and try to exploit it to their use. So supply chain is a major attack vector, and you should address it. You should understand, and you should, from one hand, give them or allow them what they need in order to help you operate your system. But from the other end, understand and map the risk coming from that specific need and put your mitigation around it. Insiders, they are not a threat. They are more like potential attack vector. That depends on your cybersecurity culture. In some places, employees will have a cybersecurity interview once a year in order to understand if something is new in their lifetime, in their environment, and if there is any risk coming from them. But in other cases, they will not meet the security people at all. And in some cases, they have the ability to approach the core of your system. And if someone wants to manipulate them or to buy the opportunity and to use them, in some cases, it can be very easy. So insider is a very high risk attack vector, and you should address that either by creating rules and credentials, or by creating a cybersecurity culture in which you are interviewing your employees from time to time, understanding what and how is the daily life are going. What can be wrong with those attack vectors? You can use them for fraud and theft. You can steal personal data from your system by manipulating and using those three attack vectors. You can deploy malware that can cause denial of service and can jeopardize your operational continuity. And in some cases, they can introduce you to ransomware and going back to the famous attack that we had last week with the oil pipe in the US. So all of these three attack vectors that I mentioned now, and these are, not all of the attack vectors, these are some that Nanolock is addressing, can cause with those damages that we see on the right. Next slide, Gaby. In order to mitigate cyber attack, it's widely common to use the defense in layer approach, in which you are mapping your network and adding security controls to each and every layer. It begins from creating a policy, organizational policy, in which you are explaining how is the management taking care of the cybersecurity risk. Later on, the policy is translated to standards, to procedures, and creating awareness in your environment. Physical security, I think, is the oldest one, and it begins from building a fence surrounding your environment, but it also creating an access control to your environment, either with a badge or with a LPR, license plate reader, to anyone that wants to enter your facility. The network layer is also quite old nowadays, and not related to deploying firewalls, IDS, industrial control systems, or intrusion detection systems, and so on and so forth. Host, application, and devices. For each and every one of them, you will find many solutions out there. And this is, again, the defense in layer approach is the common one when adopting cybersecurity in your environment. But we believe that something is missing, because in many cases, people tend to neglect the last mile, the end device, especially when you are talking about industrial control system and operational technology environment. Either is because the vendor insists that no one should touch his system, or because the fear of creating latency that might jeopardize the process itself. And this is exactly the layer in which Nanolock is now addressing, and this is the solution that Nanolock is introducing to that layer. Next slide, Gaby. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain model. This model has 7 different milestones when doing an attack, starting with reconnaissance and ending with action and objective. And we at Nanolock believe that we can stop the last mile of the attack by deploying our solution and literally preventing the attack from being deployed in the environment that we are working on. Now, I know that preventing, when it comes to ICS, OT, and IIOT, it's almost a forbidden word, but with the right attitude, with the right dynamic, with the vendors, with the operators of the system itself, we know that by understanding and getting the clearance to deploy the device, the software on the device, we were able to protect it better than it protected nowadays. The next one, Gaby. And this is exactly the new layer of defense that Nanolock is presenting. By creating a new methodology or a new term of passive prevention, Nanolock is able to block any attempt to modify the critical data in your device. And this is the core of what we are doing. By deploying a gatekeeper, after negotiating either with the vendor or with the operator, and together, understanding what are those areas that no one is allowed to do or to modify without the signature and the key of Nanolock, we are able to create a better protection and to create what we call a passive prevention of unauthorized modification. Next slide, Gaby. This is what we call in Nanolock the zero trust approach. I know it's a widely common term nowadays, but zero trust approach is exactly what we are doing by not allowing unauthorized changes to the critical area that together we determine and decide. Next slide, Gaby. These are some of the value propositions that Nanolock brings to the table. Starting from saving costs to the environment and ending with creating a more reliable environment and devices, and providing the operators and the vendors the ability to trust their environment in a more rest-assuring atmosphere. Next slide. Again, we are protecting from cyber attacks and human error, and maintaining the device operational integrity, and maintaining and understanding the needs of the either the vendors or the operator is one of our strongest skills, and that's what we bring to the table, along with zero trust and device level protection. Next slide. Okay, we have covered that earlier. You can move to the other one, to the next one. I wanted to allow you and to provide you with time to ask questions, so that's why I'm rushing at the end. Gaby, the floor is yours again. Let's see if we have any questions.
Thank you very much. Un pequeño detalle, sorry for the Spanish, Yanir.
Okay.
Tenemos bastantes visitantes y participantes también de España. Si tienen alguna pregunta, se puede hacer también en español o bien o en inglés directamente, así Yanir puede contestarlas para todos nosotros. Así que están todos invitados. ¿Algún comentario, alguna cuestión? Solamente indicarlo en la parte de Q&A, así podemos habilitarles y pueden preguntar directamente si tienen alguna consulta, o mismo escribir la pregunta en chat y se lo preguntamos a Yanir. Mientras la gente va, while the people are thinking about questions, Yanir, let me ask you one question myself. So, sorry for the direct question. You know, Israelis understand direct questions sometimes, or always. So, how you do it? If you let me to ask you that question.
Yeah.
Maybe you will not tell us the secret sauce, but at least to give us some light on that.
Well, thank you for the direct question. You know, sometimes people tend to either neglect the direct question and to move to the other technology, and some people like yourself are touching the nerve and the sensitive thing. How we do it? Nanolock is very simple, by the way. It's a small, light software, a code that, along with the vendor and the operator, is being deployed on the end device. Why do I call it passive protection? Because we are not consuming any memory. We are not consuming. I mean, we are up to 50 kilobyte. It's very light and very easy to deploy. We are not consuming any CPU. We are on a passive mode, means that only when you approach and try to do modification, we are waking up and asking, do you have the signature or the key of Nanolock? Yes or no? If yes, please come inside. If no, you are blocked. An alert is being generated to the MOT, management of things, the management platform of Nanolock. So it's a small software that we are deploying it along with the operators and the vendors. in a very relatively short time. We just need to sit with you to understand what are the critical areas, and by saying critical areas, I mean to what are the information that you don't want people to change without the authorization, without your authorization. It can be configuration data, it can be calibration data, it can be any partition or folder that you will decide that no one should modify without your information. And I'm choosing my word very carefully. Modifying. You can read the information, but you cannot modify. So once we have decided what are those critical areas that no one should change without your permission, we are then creating our own driver, and together with you, we are deploying that at the end device. And by that, we have created the resilience that we wanted. So this is the magic that we are doing. By the way, we have registered a patent over that because it's very light, very easy to deploy, and very straightforward. It's at the end of the day, if I'm trying to make it more easy to understand, it's not more than 3 if questions. Are you allowed? And so on.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the direct answer.
Okay. I will add a few more things. I mean, we are not just, in some cases, we are at the end of the device, like smart meters and so on. In some cases, we are protecting a large machines. We have a good example from a good client in Europe, in Switzerland, where they are very sensitive, both for the operational of the machine itself, both for the data. And we were able, along with them, to deploy our solution in their machine, not a specific device, a machine, a large machine. After we sat together and understand what are the areas in which we don't want people to modify without the authorization of the client. Hence, we've seen, and when we've done it, no one is allowed to do any modification to the system itself. And the client is very happy with the solution. By the way, it's highly expensive machines, and we were able to protect them, add a layer of defense that wasn't there before.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Do you have any other question from the audience? ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Algún tema? So if you mention, Yanir, another one, what is the role of the operator in this case? Do you need a kind of cellular barrier, or can it be on Wi-Fi, for instance, or what happens with 5G, if you let me ask you?
All of the questions, the answer is the same, yes. First of all, our solution is on-prem. The clients managing that, we are a technology provider. It's not, you can deploy it either in the cloud or on-prem. He owns the software, he owns the management platform. He decides when and how to communicate. Now, back to your question regarding the communication or management of things. I gave the example of the machinery of the client. It's isolated machine. It's not communicating with anyone. Anytime that they want to update the firmware, what they've done so far, they approach the machine, connected somehow either with a Bluetooth, either with a RJ45. They connected something, a laptop to the machine, and update the firmware. We have deployed our management on the laptop itself, and now the agent of Nanolock asking, are you authorized to do this firmware update? If yes, please do. If no, you are blocked. We can piggyback on any communication platform that you are using. Either it's 5G, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth. Again, the same way that you are communicating with your devices, with your machines, with your system today, this is the same platform that we will use in order to communicate between the agent and the management platform.
Excelente. I can invent more questions, but maybe, I don't know if there's any other question among the people. Let's try to inspire more.
With your permission, Gaby, 2 more examples of things that we've done recently, and I think some of the audience will be interested. First, we've created integration with IDS, dedicated OT IDS, intrusion detection system to OT environment. And we were able to create synergy between the network layer in which the IDS players are working and the last mile, the device layer that we are playing. And we are able to enrich either SOC, Security Operations Center, or SIM system, Security Information Event Management System, with more information that they were not able to receive so far. So the synergy that Nanolock is now creating with IDS network solutions is something that created a lot of good vibes and led to a new opportunities and a new project. So this is one example. And now we are playing very hard in the smart meter industry. Again, the communication layer or the protocol and more like a concept, DLMS is highly secure, but no one is approaching the end device. And we are now providing a new approach, a fresh approach to defend the last mile, the device itself, and to get the ability to provide the higher levels, the SOC, the SIM layer with new information regarding attempts to jeopardize the system itself.
Fantastic. So I think that we will close here as we don't have much questions right now. So Yanir, Nanolock team, thank you very, very much for the knowledge that you're sharing and the experiences. It was quite insightful and interesting, and at least building also for me, even I have some years in the telecom industry, but really impressive. Thank you for the view. Thank you, of course, everyone that joined us. Muchas gracias por participar en este webinar. Estaremos encantados de, obviamente, recibir cualquier pregunta, consulta y trabajar juntos con Nanolock en alguna de las cuestiones que ustedes puedan tener y ojalá podamos hacer algún proyecto juntos que también, sin ocultar y sin aquí traer nada, es el objetivo de todos, que nos ayudemos y tengamos situaciones win-win para beneficio de todos. Así que muchísimas gracias. A ver, tenemos aquí una cuestión en el chat. Muy interesante. Muchas gracias, Luis. Así que nada, thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Let's continue offline. You have all our signals to find us. And bye-bye. Adiós.